I think the bottom line is I knew I had a problem. And by the time I reached 40, 41, I was divorced a second time. Why did I have to go through so much suffering in life? Especially when I've been so faithful to God and pursued, God's calling in my life. My feelings were hurt. I see that man who's emasculated and without potency or assertion or masculine strength in me. How do I take more responsibility for my world? And how do I assert myself in a world that desperately needs compassion? They need love.
Well, that's just a part of the story that's about ready to unfold before your very ears, guys. So let's go. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to The Next Man Up.
Part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome in once again to the Next Man Up podcast. So good as always to have you along with us for another episode and to be part of the community that's changing the world, one boy becoming a healthy and godly man at a time. You know this, my name is Mark, and I'm honored to be your host once again today. For the next 2 episodes and a bonus 3rd episode, we're going to explore some topics that we've not really explored before on the show. Things like vision quest and transition space and death and rebirth. And to join me in this adventurous conversation is Andrew Boscaljon. Let me tell you a little bit about who Andrew is. He's a father of 7. He's a husband and partner to his wife, Megan, and a devout believer in Jesus. In his professional life, Andrew is a strategy leader in the financial services industry and serves a nonprofit in advocating for mental health in his state. On a personal level, he's on mission to discover what it means to be a man of the Creator and a restorer in his world. Through his life of trials and deep exploration into the journey of manhood, the great desert mystics, and ancient ritual, Andrew seeks a life that glorifies God as a son of the great Father, a son to his earthly father, and as a father to his own son. Recently, Andrew participated in his own vision quest, which later perpetuated into the design and execution of a rite of passage for himself, for his band of brothers, and his own son, Dean. Andrew is passionate about connecting men, activating them, and co-creating a better future. Well, if that doesn't whet your appetite a little bit, maybe this will. We're going to get deeper into Andrew's story, into his vision quest experience. And then, as I mentioned, the bonus 3rd episode is going to be Andrew describing the rite of passage process and ceremony that he did for his son, Dean. Guys, I really enjoyed this conversation. At some points, it felt like we were speaking a different language because the words that we were using, the ideas, the concepts are not in everyday vocabulary of men. But I think when you hear and process and digest Andrew's story, you'll begin to realize that maybe it should be. Maybe these ideas of transition and death and rebirth and vision quest that our ancients understood, our ancient forefathers understood, maybe they have a place in our lives today, and it's up to us to rediscover that. And so that's kind of the challenge and the invitation that's before you as we embark on this journey. And so won't you engage with your mind and with your heart and with your spirit as we explore some of these ideas together? Okay, so let's get to it. Here's part 1 of my conversation with Andrew Boscaljon. Well, Andrew, ever since we talked on the phone a few weeks ago, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for giving us some of your time today, for bringing your story. I'm thanking you in advance. I have some sense of where this might go, but there's always new stuff that comes up. So I'm excited, and I'm also honored that you're willing to be on the show with us today, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel so honored, so privileged to be able to be here today and share my story as well. Can't wait.
So when we talked before, you told me something that I want to just jump right in with. It's beginning with the now. In the past year, at the age of 41, you did something that sounds really odd and oddly out of place in our modern day, in our current culture, in our time and space. You went on a vision quest. What was that about? What did you do? How did that come about?
Yeah. That's a great question. I almost have to start that answer in my mid 30s because it was in my mid 30s that I had already been through divorce number one. I was remarried. I was realizing that in life, I didn't feel that I had the skills and the experience to do it well. I was running into some boundaries at work. Trying to be successful. And I think the bottom line is I knew I had a problem. And by the time I reached 41, I was divorced a second time. And beyond that, I was noticing that on this relationship issue, I didn't have great relationships even with my own children, even with my pals. I didn't feel like I was showing up very well in the lives of others. And so in my 30s, I started on a track of learning about relationships, getting counseling, learning about coaching. And I think that stepping into that domain and learning more about myself and how I relate to me and the world was an entry point. And it started the path to a vision quest. So I found some skills and experience, and I found some answers on how to have better relationships and how to connect more closely with my own family. But there still was a point where I felt like it's like the patterns were still there. It's almost like I didn't have the right question to find the right answer anymore, but I needed to get away from all of the noise of life. And I needed to reconnect with God in a way that I could find, maybe if I don't have the right question, God would reveal the question to me and the answer that I could pursue, or maybe there would be an answer in that as well. And so, look, the bottom line here is I made a lot of progress on my own, and I needed to get away from all of it. And I needed space to listen. I needed to get outside of distraction. And Mark, I Googled Vision Quest. I just Googled it and found one. I found a program out there that would take me through it.
How did you even get to those two words, the Vision Quest? Like I mean, in order to go to Google, you have to know kind of what you're asking for. How did you get to that specific question?
Yeah, it's unusual language. It is. I look through the coaching practice. I learned about ancient ritual, ceremony, the way people did things out in wilderness. And I think what happened was because I found myself in this place of being alienated from my family and the church, stigmatized by divorce. I'm like, I've got to go in the wilderness, and who knows something about the wilderness? Well, what I found in that was Jesus went to the wilderness, and the Native Americans spent a lot of time in the wilderness. So I started to study the Native American rites and rituals, and studied medicine work, the medicine wheel. And through those studies, I found the rite of passage where a boy becomes a man. And of course, in that tradition, boys are much younger when they went through a rite of passage.
Right.
But for me, it felt like an entry point to discover what is a rite of passage all about. And maybe I need it. Maybe there's some answers there for me.
So there was this universal longing in you to discover manhood is what I'm hearing, or explore masculinity, and this draw into the wilderness to be able to experience that. And that's what I'm hearing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's your version of a story that seems to be a universal story for guys, that longing to become a man. And wilderness experience is one way to experience that, to go find it.
Yeah, there's definitely something about an overall inquiry of what is a man? What does it mean to be a man? And does my life look like that? And it felt pretty honest to say, no, I need more support, more tools here to figure out how to take more responsibility in my world, take more responsibility for myself. And so it just seemed like a really great access point to explore, and a mysterious one too, because how often do we talk about what Jesus did for 40 days in the desert? We know he went, but what did he do?
Right. There's just a couple verses. That's it. Yeah,
that's it.
So what did you do specifically? As long as we're not breaking a code of silence here or anything, what did you do? What can you share?
Yeah, look, I found a program, and there was a lot involved. It was an 11-day program. I participated in a sweat lodge. I went through medicine wheel instruction. There was work around personal myth making, trying to make sense of our experience and put it in the context of maybe our life mission or our life vision, the world outside of us, and then storytelling that accompanied that. There was group psychotherapy. There were therapists on staff that were taking participants through that process. And then, the high point was certainly a 4-day solitude fast, out in the wilderness, alone, without a tent, with my water, and just sitting there with that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it felt like a comprehensive program, and exactly what I was looking for without really knowing, when I Googled for it.
So I'm gonna chase a thought here. 15 years ago, in my own journey, I wouldn't have been comfortable exploring this idea with you, but knowing your passion for following Jesus and listening to you describe what happened, what you experienced, it sounds as if this experience was not brought to you by Jesus folks, and yet you kind of took Jesus into that because that's part of your relationship. Like, what was there ever a tension there for you? Or like, maybe a better way to say it is, how did you explore the spiritual and the depth there for you in the context of some of these more what we might think of as non-Christian type of traditions and activities?
I mean, look, you're bringing up my greatest fear going into it. How would I do outside of the context of Christian life and everything I know, and step into a space that is deeply shaman? And what I found was that through the ceremony, through the ritual, Christ was speaking to me. There's a constant conversation, and sometimes it was me crying out, "Where are you? I'm scared." Other times it was just the presence, and other times there were moments like in prayer life where there's conversation. And so it was a real interesting push and pull, outside of my element culturally, outside of my element religiously, but to stay within that context and find God even there was pretty powerful.
What else did you find as you look back on it, or as you came out of that? What else did you find?
You know, there are a couple things that I found out there, and there's suffering in our life, and then there's things we do, and we choose suffering for our life. And I think that there was that sort of break point for me as I went into this. Like, God, I really, really need you to meet me here and show me what's next. And for me, there were some really, really powerful takeaways. I mean, I had an experience where I think for the first time in my life, I found and understood and felt and experienced humility in a powerful way. It was an ego break. It was an ego break, you know, and working through that process where I experienced this, you know, I ended up truly in a sort of face in the mud in front of the fire, crying out to God and seeing me in the context of God. And look, it started with my feelings were hurt. Why did I have to go through so much suffering in life? Especially when I've been so faithful to God and pursued, you know, God's calling in my life. My feelings were hurt. It was pride, man. It was pride. And God really met me there in my smallness. I'll never forget it. Changed me. And there were some other things too, just around, you know, getting some vision in the solitude around what's next for me, really hearing and that quiet whisper that I heard out there. And I think also when it comes to relationships, just really, really understanding how to have healthy boundaries. Look, I'm not saying everyone who goes on a vision quest is going to experience this. This was my experience that was waiting for me there, right? And I was called to it. And so to say, hey, this is what I found, man, I don't know if everybody's going to find that. That's just what I found.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. It changed me.
So I'm picturing myself in your shoes, thinking, I can see myself having this thought. I wonder how you respond to it. Why did I wait 20 years to do something that was so significant and impactful? And I know how I would answer that today, but I'm curious how you would answer that.
Man, I mean, experiences, context. You know, it's there's something pretty special about our lives and the challenges we go through and the things we persevere and suffer through. And hindsight's always 2020. I would say that something like a vision quest, getting out into the wild, into the wilderness, it's always about connecting with God, but it's about connecting with God in context. And so it would be hard to say that every time we go out, we're going to have the same experience. Of course, we never will, right? So God's kind of tricky. It's when we want God, God isn't there. When we don't want God, God is right there. So you really can't design these things. But Mark, I forgot your question now. No, trying to circle back to it.
No, you're good, because you know my tendency would be to for me, right, speaking out of my own life and experience of Wire, my tendency would be, and I've asked this not in the Vision Quest context, but in my own journey in the last 5 years. Why did it take me so long to do X or Y or to get A or B? And the simple answer that I keep coming back to, which I think is profound enough, is I wasn't ready. I was ready when I was ready, and I experienced it at the time. And any time prior to that, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah, I mean, I rewind to moments of suffering where God met me there too. I didn't go on a vision quest. You know, it's like there's something pretty powerful about connecting with God and it's transformative, but it's transformative in different ways. And I just don't think that we can ever plan on it. I think it shows up, right? We can orchestrate. We can be disciplined to set ourselves up, carve out time, right? Go on a solitude retreat or something like that. But are we ever ready? I think we're just being rendered down. We're just being made perfect over time.
The phrase that came to me recently is, the journey is the process. As I was in my own dialogue, prayer, conversation time, that was one of the things that Father told me, is the journey is the process. And that's how those are my words, or his words to me. Your version is, we're being rendered down, and we're being perfected, as Paul said.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. I'm digging the vibe here so far. Let me take you back into your teens, because when we talked before, you made a statement that I think is worthy of capturing here. You said when you were back in your teens, you were starving for love. What did you mean by that, and what was the context for you in back then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, when I was a teenager, I grew up in church. I grew up, knowing that God loves me, knowing that my parents loved me, because they told me that they loved me. And I went to Sunday school, and my teachers would say, well, God loves you. Right? So the message was paramount. It's constantly before me. But look, the reality of it was, I didn't feel loved. There wasn't a heart connection to that knowledge that resonated with me at that age. I think that, we've all tried to define love. I don't know how to define it very well. My parents, they did a really good job of listening to me. They definitely did. And I felt loved by that. I didn't always feel understood, and what teenager does feel understood. Maybe some do. I didn't. And I rarely felt validated. I rarely felt truly validated that I was on a course and that the course was appropriate. And you know what? I think beyond that, I don't know that, well, I do know that my parents and those around me, my siblings, didn't meet me in my suffering. They didn't help me. They didn't help me through some very difficult years where, my dad was taking care of my mom. So I think, why was I starving for love as a teen? I think that part of it were the conditions of the home, and maybe part of it was my maturity and my ability to grasp a head knowledge thing in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a combination of those things. But I think the downside of all of that is that there was this dissonance that I was dealing with through my teens, where I said I love you without feeling, and I received the words without feeling it. And that was a problem for me. It really did leave me hungry for love. And
so what happened as a result of that dissonance between head and heart knowledge? Like, how did that play out in your life?
Well, I definitely went on a quest for love. I wanted to connect that sort of disagreement between heart and head. In my teen years, not unlike most teens, I think I found a lot of access in music, feeling emotion through music, and trying to explore it, kind of catalyze it from that direction. It was accessible. and something that I enjoyed. I would say that another strategy for me was I found love in my friends' homes. So where I didn't feel it in my own home, I got to participate, but it was always as an observer, or I got trace amounts of it as the son's friend that we know. Right. So there was definitely a quest to understand it better. But let me tell you, the way it played out is I became a guy that said, I love you first. And so when I finally met a woman that was interested in me, I told her I loved her, and we got married. We got married because that's what you do, right? But my heart, man, I didn't have the I didn't have the self-awareness. I didn't have that connection yet to be able to know, do I truly love this person? And is this right for me?
Yeah.
So that's been a journey for me, and earlier in this discussion, I talked about relationship challenges, and that's one of them. It's how do I have intimacy in the right way with other people and in the right categories of people? That's been a journey for me to try to figure that one out.
Well, you mentioned intimacy and relationship. I'm also thinking of some of the things you said about your relationship with your dad and how you described him as just being like he was there, but more focused on taking care of your mom because of her illness and her condition. And you even use the words emasculated and no potency in response to your dad. Like, why use those words? And what was it about that makes you see in your dad those characteristics, at least at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's strong words. In fact, I am taken aback by the language. But where I go first is it's because I see that man who's emasculated and without potency or assertion or masculine strength in me. I see that man in me, Mark. And the things that I have had to overcome in my life to find a better balance. I went back to my hometown to walk in his footsteps after saying those words. And I went to different places to think, to really reconsider this man. And does he have, is he truly emasculated and without potency? And, I saw lots of service. Man, I saw lots of caring and compassion, kindness, doing the right things, showing up for his family every day. Those things are definitely there. They're definitely there. But I also found a man that didn't have strong positions. He had truths, which he called integrity, but he wasn't able to see other truths or bring his truth into a world that needs it. And so that's me I'm talking about. That's also my dad that I'm talking about. It's this bigger question of how do I take more responsibility for my world, and how do I assert myself in a world that desperately needs compassion? They need love.
Robert Lewis, the author of Raising a Modern Day Knight and behind the Authentic Manhood program, discipleship, content, curriculum, whatever you want to call it, part of his definition of being a man is rejecting passivity. You used emasculation and no potency, but another way to say it is just giving into passivity. And it's interesting how you're indicting, maybe that's too strong a word, how you're recognizing it in yourself and seeing where it came from in your dad.
And his father.
Right, exactly.
I've got so much compassion for this family situation. And of course, it's not just unique to my family. On a broader scale, what's going on with men and their passivity.
Right, 100%.
The world is hurting.
100%.
And their passivity for themselves.
Yep. Well, we've arrived at that point where we press pause on this conversation and we'll resume with the next episode. But here's my question for you. How are you processing and resonating with the conversation so far? I'd love to hear from you. Maybe this break is a welcome interruption and you're done. Or maybe it's an unwelcome interruption. Of course, this is what I hope for, because you're engaged and you're excited about where this conversation is going and what it could mean for you and perhaps your relationship with your father and or your son. Whatever your reaction is, I would love to get some feedback from you. In fact, that is our email address. You can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. Just drop me a quick note if you would. Tell me what stands out, how this is resonating with you. Maybe it's not, and that's okay if it's not. I would just love to hear from you. You can also comment on our Facebook page, find the episode post there, and leave a comment if you're so inclined. But if you would, let me know how this is sitting with you and how you're reacting to some of these ideas that Andrew and I were talking about. Well, as is the case, we will resume the conversation next week. You guys know the drill. Same bat time, same bat channel. Again, if you could just shoot me a note, feedback@thenextmanup.com, and let me know how you're processing this, that would be great. And I look forward to being back next week for part 2. And don't miss next week the bonus 3rd episode, where Andrew and I go deep into the ceremony that he did for his son, Dean. I know for those of you dads that have boys around the age of 10, 11, or 12, this is going to be of particular interest to you. So don't miss that bonus 3rd episode. Okay, guys, that's it. Looking forward to being back next week. Until then, adios. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.